Do you feel that the deck is stacked against you? It's easy to imagine that everybody else has got their shit together and doing well. How do I know that? Because everyone feels like that. I feel like that. And I felt like that even worse the younger I was, when I didn't really understand how finance works and how to plan for my retirement. And what if I told you that you're wrong, that you're doing okay? I used to stay awake at night worrying about this kind of stuff, but I want you to sleep soundly at night. And all it takes is a bit of an attitude change. Well, now I'm 4 years into early retirement, I see the world from a different perspective, and I seem to spend a lot of time looking back at my younger self and realising the kind of bullshit that I was being sold back then. And today I'm going to share one area where I really feel like I was misled, and it's one area that kept me further and further away from my dream of retirement, of having time to do what I want to do in life. And this is something that I think you can do too. And that is the rising cost of living. There's a phrase that's going around at the moment, which is the cost of living crisis. It's talked about constantly, like it's new, like it's news. So here's the news. The cost of living is going up. It fluctuates, but it always goes up. There are good times, there are bad times. Do you know, we've just lived through the halcyon days of near 0% interest rates. That's just never been heard of before. In the 80s, interest rates in the UK were over 15%. And I'm sure at that time, there was talk of a cost of living crisis. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a cost of living crisis denier. There is a cost of living crisis, and it's happening all over the world, not just in your backyard. Sarah and I, we travel full time, and everywhere we go we see people struggling, and we struggle with how the costs are increasing, what seems to be on a daily basis at the moment. But what I want you to do is start thinking a bit more independently of the news, because a news article with the word crisis in it is going to get a lot more clicks. A bit like a YouTube title with the word crisis in it is going to get a lot more clicks. You know that, don't you? So state the fact and then move on. The cost of living will always be going up. But what can you do about it? What a lot of people do about it is say, well, who am I? I can't do anything about this. And that's like giving up. But if you're watching this video, that's not you. You are a lot more resourceful. You're out there looking for answers. That's why you're here. If you disagree and you think there isn't anything you can do about it, then I recommend going back and watching the last video that I put out. I'll link to it up here, because there I tell you some home truths. Now, I think not many viewers of our channel know much about my early life. So I'm going to share it here. I'm sharing it really to stop those keyboard warriors out there already typing saying, well, it's all right for you. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. There's nothing special about me. I'm just your average Joe. I don't have a hard luck story to tell. I've got a story to tell, as every one of you have as well. Life isn't easy, is it? So here's a potted history of the young Neil. I left school at the age of 16. I didn't go to university, didn't have any further education. And I joined a youth training scheme where I was paid £26 a week, of which £10 of that I gave to my parents for rent, leaving me £16 a week to live on. From there, I got my first job. That was at the age of 17. I moved out from home and moved into a shared house. A month after I started that new job, I got made redundant because the employer went bust. Actually, how this all happened is very, very British. I look back on it with a bit of joy, actually. I don't know why, but I had the best job in the world. I was a computer hardware engineer inside computers with things and screwdrivers working away. And the big boss, I've never met him before, I'm 17 years old. He was like a hero to me. I'm in this computer and he walked up behind me and said, oh, you're Neil, the new lad, aren't you? I said, oh, yes. Explain to me what you're doing. Oh, well, I'm adding some memory into this computer. Oh, really good. So, loving it here, loving this job. He said, oh, great. There's going to be a meeting in about an hour. Okay, you're going to be there? Yeah, I'll be there. So I walked into this meeting room, quite a small company. We all sat down and the boss said, right, we've gone bust. You're all out of a job. So what we all did, this is the British element, is we all left. Someone locked the front door. We went to the pub over the road. I got pissed. Now, when I sobered up, I realised this wasn't a great time to be unemployed. At this time in the 80s, 16 to 24-year-olds, there were more than 20% of that age group out of work. Now, that is quite sobering. But what I did is I thought what I'm going to do for a few months is feel sorry for myself. That involved watching TV, getting out of bed late and thinking, woe is me. Then one day I woke up and I thought, no one else is going to own this problem other than me. So I was on benefits at the time. I wrote over 100 letters looking for a job. I knew if it is to be, it's up to me. So I found this job and started working. And then at the age of 19, I got married because I'm dumb. And I'm not saying that this is the most idiotic thing I've ever done, but it's certainly right up there. Not because of who I married. She's a lovely girl. But 19, getting married. What was I thinking? Right, roll on the drums. Do you want a surprise? At the age of 21, I got divorced. You didn't see that coming, did you? So then, over the following years, I made bad financial decision after bad financial decision and landed myself in tens of thousands of debt. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s. That's when tens of thousands of debt was a lot. And also, I remember when I got too far, too deep, I spoke to my lenders. And I think at this time, they didn't have the same duty of care that I think lenders do today. They had no interest in my plight. This was my problem. Knowing this was my problem, I knew I've got to face it head on. I've got no choice. Later, a few years later, I met Sarah and she joined this battle with me and we both battled together to get out of debt. And it can be done. There's another saying, I think this is the third saying I've used in this video, maybe not. And that is, inch by inch is a cinch. And that's what we did. We did it inch by inch to get our financial situation better. And that's exactly why I'm making these kinds of videos. Not for the people that say, woe is me, but for the people that see that they've got a problem and they're willing to put the work in to solve that problem for themselves. The people who are going to go for it and really make it in their lives. So with that context, let's get back to this cost of living crisis. And making things better when it feels like everything is stacked against you is tough. And there are many, many ways of tackling this problem. But if I was in this position now, the first place I would start would be this. And that is to work tooth and nail to get on the right side of the interest rate equation. Basically, I mean, get out of debt and stay out of debt. And I know that's tough, that's hard, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start with the first step. And why? Well, interest rates are high at the moment, aren't they? And that's a bad thing, isn't it? Is it? Well, it depends. Let's use two examples. Let's say you've got £100,000 mortgage, and just to keep the maths simple in this video, let's say that interest rates have now reached 10%. Well, in a year, £100,000 mortgage will mean you have to pay £10,000 of interest on that mortgage. And that's before you even think about paying off any of the principal. Conversely, if you're a saver and you've got £100,000 saved, before you get tax into the equation, you will earn £10,000 of interest when the interest rates are at 10%. Without even lifting a finger. And I know it's too simplistic to say, be a saver, not a borrower. Easy. And we all know that people who are wealthy become more wealthy. Money makes money, and it's because of equations like that. And I know at the moment interest rates are 4%, something like that. But you get the point. But if you are planning to retire one day, you've got to come over this bridge from being a debt-based person into being a saver. I guess you don't have to, but retirement life is so much easier if you're not saddled with debt. So what can you do to bring that day forward where you've gone across that bridge? Well, firstly, are you living in a house that's bigger than you need, in a more expensive area than you need? If so, why? And what would happen if you went to a house that you can afford to be in, I guess, and the money that you are paying on the mortgage, you either use that to pay the mortgage off sooner, or depending on the equation of interest rates at the time, use that money to invest? Are you driving a car that you change every 3 years and you've got payments on that car and that car's got a really cool badge on the bonnet? Why? And do you know how much that car is really costing you? And are you spending money on things that don't really bring real value? Retail therapy, buying a new outfit or a new bit of tech. That's what I used to do. I used to buy tech, spend money on a new piece of tech. Why not? Because I've got this big mountain of debt that I've got, which is my mortgage, which is in the hundreds of thousands. So me spending 200 quid on a new bit of tech, well, that's just a drop in the ocean. That's why I used to see it. And believe me, when you move from being a borrower to being a saver, the need for those things, that retail therapy, totally dissipates. That problem has gone because you don't need therapy from anything. And you realise then, because of you fighting tooth and nail to save that money to get out of debt, you know that spending 200 quid on this bit of tech that you know will be obsolete in a year or so is actually standing in the way of your financial goals. This isn't something you've got to worry about. I know from friends that when you hit this stage, the need for retail therapy has gone. And I said at the start that I think you're being misled financially. And that's because of what is led to be the norm in life. It's normal to get a finance on a car for 3 years. It's normal to buy a phone on a 2-year contract and replace it every 2 years with a new phone. It's normal to subscribe to every subscription under the sun. And this normality comes from you being marketed to. I know, because I was being marketed to, and now when I see this marketing, I see right through it. Sarah and I don't buy anything on credit now. If there's something we want, we buy it because we know that we have saved the money to buy it. This is probably what your mum or your grandmother tells you about, that when they were young, they didn't have all this easy credit. If they wanted something, they had to save for it. And that's really clever if you think about it. And do you know the most insidious part of this that makes me so angry? That is that the people that can afford credit the least pay the most for it. And here's an example. I picked something totally at random. Honestly, totally. And this is the first thing I looked at. I'm sure I could have looked harder and found much more horrific things than this. So there's a company in the UK called f.i.r.e. I picked f.i.r.e. because they come from a catalogue background. That's where people get catalogues at home and pay weekly for things. I thought it'd be an interesting place to start. And I picked at random a TV that costs £749. Which isn't bad, I guess, for a TV. But you can get that on their buy now and pay later terms. The interest rate on that is 44.9%. Very, very high. But it's worse than that. This interest rate is calculated daily. So in their own terms and conditions, it states that because of this, you end up paying interest on interest. As I say, this is insidious stuff. And it's the people that can't afford a TV, that want the TV today, that are going to do buy it now and pay later. But when you pay later, you're paying substantially more. I think I looked and calculated that TV is going to cost 1,200 quid. Terrifying. And also, if you're thinking about this and thinking, yeah, I want to work towards retiring, but the amount of effort it takes to get out of debt, step by step, inch by inch, is so hard. When I get to that stage, it's kind of like there's another mountain ahead of me, because now I've got to start saving for my retirement. Well, there's this thing called compound interest, that when you're a borrower is working against you, but when you're a saver is working for you, like that example I shared earlier of 10% return. Now, I don't expect you to tackle all of this or change everything overnight. That would just be too overwhelming. But what can you do today? I'm sure there's something. So I'll give you an example. For me, when I was working, what I used to love was a proper coffee. Every day I'd spend £4 on a coffee. So if you're working 48 weeks of the year, you got 4 weeks holiday, then that is almost £1,000 a year. And you go, wow, again, That's a drop in the ocean, isn't it? Well, is it? I put that into an interest calculator online, and I went back to that example of £100,000 mortgage, and you're paying it off over 25 years with an interest rate of 3%, which I think is lower than you can get at the moment. If over that period you stopped taking that coffee and you took that £1,000 every year and paid it off your mortgage, your £100,000 mortgage you're paying over 25 years, how much do you think that would cut off the term of your mortgage? Would be fun if you pause the video now and stick it in the comments below, and no cheating. If you did do that, I'm going to go and have a look. It's going to be interesting to see. But the answer is 4 years and 10 months. So that £4 coffee every day isn't a drop in the ocean. That is significant. That one coffee is getting you out of your mortgage 4 years, 10 months early. And in those 4 years, 10 months, you've got the money you're spending on your mortgage that you can take and either throw at other debt and pay that off, or start using that towards your future and your retirement. When you start looking at things differently like this, I really hope it gets you fueled up and changes that mindset that I said at the outset of this video, and start looking for other ways that you can get ahead in life. And I'd love to hear your stories of things like this that you've tried that have made a significant difference in your life. Stick that in the comments, not just for me, but for other people watching this video, because they may look down there and see some great ideas that they could implement for themselves. And if you haven't subscribed, maybe consider it. I'm going to be sharing more ideas for how you can get ahead in life in future videos. And when Sarah and I took control of our financial future all those years ago, honestly, I couldn't have dreamed that we'd retire early and live this dream life that we've got, where we're traveling the world full time. Might not look like a dream with this backdrop here, but at the moment we're doing a house sit in England for 3 lovely little cats. So I'm a bit limited on the kind of outlook that I can use. But travel has always been our dream, and we travel full time. That's what we do. And we're not rich. Far from it, in fact. We budget every single penny so that we can live our dream. I want you to live your dream. And to do that, you've got to think about budgeting, saving, and dealing with that debt. Really hope you found this video interesting. I'll see you next time.